Okay, hello again. And there was a power cut because of this. It created some kind of strange situations, and Caroline was there for like 3 4 minutes alone. But I got power back, and just remember, this is the problem many of the people in India and as well as people in developing nations face in accessing MOOCs. So you can expect what kind of difficulties one might encounter. So someone has to find a solution for it too. But nevertheless, let's continue where we left. We were speaking about Caroline, her journey, as well as what you see. MOOCs are not just exactly going to revolutionize, but they are going to have a complementary way of getting educated. Plus, she highlighted the issue that many of the MOOCs takers are already educated. So, in a way, it's not helping. And she also suggested some solutions on how the people who are not able to access can gain the educations through MOOCs. See, and going back to MOOCs itself, there has been a lot of criticism about MOOCs. They are monetized, and some of them are also called boring by students in discussions forums. Now, nevertheless, as we are taking MOOCs for the first time, professors also experimenting with MOOCs, something new. So, Caroline, what do you think a ideal MOOC or a MOOC has to be? What kind? How someone has to design the MOOC? What it has to contain to get to give maximum to students?
Well, designing the ideal MOOC. I mean, I think the most important thing in a MOOC is to keep the students engaged and interested throughout the course. Having recorded video lectures, which the first MOOCs were made up of, is not enough to keep people engaged. When you're studying on your own, I think you need a lot of self-discipline, and it's very difficult to stick with it if you're not being engaged enough. So, I mean, I believe that today technology provides some amazing tools which can be used to make these courses much more interactive and a lot more fun. So I think that's very, very important in a MOOC. Also, recent research and reports have suggested that the cutoff point where people tend to drop out, if they do drop out, is after 4 or 5 weeks of a course. And I think MOOC designers have to take this into consideration, and that MOOCs should not be too long, to deliver content in shorter chunks of, let's say, 4 weeks each, where you complete a chunk, possibly get a certificate at the end of each chunk, and this in turn, I think, would help a lot motivated on course as they see their progression through the course in bite-sized chunks, if you like.
All right. So MOOCs should not be long and they should be made interactive. Any interesting comments you have received from your discussion forums from students on designing MOOCs, ideal MOOCs?
I think in order to several things. I think the way it's delivered, as I've just discussed, is really important. So the sort of technology behind it. Also, professor is really important. The way he delivers his content. Now, this is obviously the case also on a campus-based course. And I think we all know from our personal experiences, even at school, the subjects where we did really well in are often the subjects where we really connected with the teacher, and the teacher really inspired us and kept us motivated. So in a MOOC, that's also really important. The professor is able to make that connection with his students, even if it's from behind a screen. Other things that are important are the way assessment is done on a course. There's a lot of controversy around peer grading, pros and cons attached to that. But I think students need to feel that the work that they put in is being assessed appropriately and fairly, and that they're getting the necessary feedback from that, because feedback obviously helps with the learning process.
And definitely, the assessment process is something which has to be revamped. Something I have felt in my 2 years journey of creating my project, that assessment method has to be changed a lot in some courses, especially there has been cases of people are dissatisfied. Anyway, let's get back to student itself, the MOOCs. So you have been monitoring the discussion forums of MOOC Lab from like more than a year since it has been started. So in your view, what qualities a MOOC student has to have? It's not because it's not the classroom of university where you are graded like in every month period. It's something very much individual. So what an ideal student can be to get maximum benefit out of MOOC?
First of all, I'd just like to say that MOOC Lab actually hasn't been running for a year. It launched in September, the end of September last year, so it's still very much in its infancy, with a lot more to come. But I just wanted to point that out, that it is very new. So the characteristics I think that the ideal MOOC student or online course student should have are, first and foremost, a lot of self-discipline. As I've mentioned before, studying a course online can be very isolating. You are on your own, behind a screen. You don't have any face-to-face interaction with people. So self-discipline is really important, just to keep at it. I think you also need to be very well organized, so that you organize all the content, the work you do in a way that's meaningful to the person studying it, so that they can always go back, find resources, so that they can use their coursework possibly to demonstrate their skills, etc. I think online students also need to be very resourceful, because it's not enough just to sit in front of a screen and let the information be thrown at you. I think you have to be fairly proactive in your learning. When you're studying an online course, you have to do some, reading around the course. You need to also try and put the skills that you're learning into practice in a practical way, maybe in your work, maybe in other life situations. And by doing that, you're consolidating what you're learning, and you're also demonstrating that you can actually use these skills, and that's very, very motivating when you see them being put into use. I think the discussion forums are also really important. I mean, evidence suggests that people who are active in the discussion forums connected to a MOOC are much more likely to complete a MOOC successfully. So I would encourage people who are studying courses online to use those forums to their benefit, to engage with people who can be helpful towards them, and to share ideas and to discuss the content of the courses.
Yeah, very well. People need to be more proactive, especially students, and that's not difficult, especially in the social media has been grown up so fast. We are now using it like as our third hand every day. So I think it's possible. And thanks, and it's very insightful to know your opinion. Let's assume I just heard about MOOCs and I want to take MOOCs, or I want to know more about what can be helpful. And I came to MOOC Lab website. How MOOC Lab can be helpful for me? Assuming that I just heard of MOOC. So how you can convince me, or how MOOC Lab can be helpful?
Well, this is exactly where MOOC Lab finds its place. I think for somebody who has heard about MOOCs, wants to get involved, but has no idea where to start. So MOOC Lab's aim is to be the first port of call for anybody who's interested in online learning, to set them off on this journey in a constructive way. So what I would suggest for a new person would be to probably look at the guides which have been made available on MOOC Lab, and there will be an increasing number of these guides, but a lot of them at the moment have been created and published with newbies in mind. So they cover the basics of what online learning is, what MOOCs are, what they involve, what characteristics, as we've just discussed, are required in people to study online courses. And it also directs people to the different platforms that offer MOOCs, with independent reviews of these platforms, covering their features and what they offer, what they're particularly good for, And this allows students to sort of narrow down the possibilities of platforms that they can use, which possibly will suit them better than others. The MOOC Lab users can also use the discussion forums to find information from other more experienced online learners. They can ask questions, and there's no better place for people to connect, for new people to connect with more experienced online learners, to discover what are the good platforms, what are the good courses, and get advice on how to go about studying a course online.
Yeah, very well. So you highlighted that many of the guides are there for students. They can get advantage, and I will be glad if something like this was happened back in 2012. But nevertheless, there's something there to help students to get out of this confusing worlds. And you have a lot of informations, positive and negative. So you said that a lot of content has been created by newbies, and a lot of guides are there, and a lot is going to come up. So what's going to become up in MOOC Lab? What new initiatives are going to see, as you highlighted that a lot of new has to come up? Anything to say?
Well, at the moment, what I'm working on is to expand the review section of MOOC Lab, because I think it's a great way for people, rather than scouring the internet to get comments, find comments by people on what's good, what's bad. My intention is to try and do that work for them. So I'm going to curate information that I find all over the internet regarding platforms and courses, and I will sort of aggregate this information into a review. So these reviews are based on content that I found elsewhere, people's reactions to platforms and courses, my own view on it as well, of course, from, you know, spending a lot of time on platforms, seeing what their features are, what they're offering from a, you know, practical point of view, as well as you know, how their particular websites work, how they look, etc. So my idea at the moment, I've focused primarily on MOOC platforms, but we're going to expand this out to other online learning course platforms that offer, for example, coding courses. This is something I'm working on at the moment, is reviewing platforms that offer online coding courses, some of which are free, some of which are paid, but all these will be published on MOOC Lab in the review section, and following on from that, guides will be produced to guide people through the different channels that exist for them. And I hope to then open up into different subject areas. So coding is one. We can then move on to other STEM subjects, or, you know, teaching subjects, or maybe platforms that offer courses for children. That, you know, there is so much out there, and I intend to do it in blocks. So I will cover a certain area, topic area, in chunks, and move forward like that.
So there's lots more is going to come up in MOOC Lab, and that's very nice to know. Some people are trying to work and making it simplified. Personal questions, especially considering that you've educated in university, I believe, like 15-20 years ago, and now you're also taking some MOOCs on your own. So there are certain groups of people I've seen in my own journey of MOOCs. They are youngsters, like below 30, who are very well accustomed to technology, and they are old age people, not old, I believe they are still learners, so 50 plus of their age. And so what kind of advice, or what kind of difference do you find of those people and this kind of age group? I have seen they find it very difficult sometimes to adjust to sit on a screen compared to the classroom education they have. Based on your perspective, how they can accustom to themselves to this new thing?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult thing, isn't it? Because obviously, as you said, the younger generation are very familiar with technology, using computers, using the tools that different programs offer. For older generation who were not brought up with all this technology, it can be a very daunting thing to do. It can be scary, you know, scared of the unknown. Having said that, personally, I know quite a lot of older people who do use technology, and who are keen to discover it, and to find out how it works, and find it very exciting. And there are there are a considerable amount of older people who do these online courses. I think once they've become familiar with one and they've experimented with it, they'll move on to do others. So I don't think it's necessarily a big barrier. It's just a question of people who possibly more open-minded to technology and happy to embrace it. But actually finding a solution to that, other than possibly why not creating a MOOC specifically designed for the older generation to teach them how to do a MOOC. That would be an interesting project.
Yeah, well, that can be. It's taking how to take MOOCs and how to get maximum out of it if you're very much new technology. So, any interesting experience you have from your own MOOC journey? Any interesting experience?
I mean, I think for me, the most unexpected and interesting experience that I've gained from getting involved in my MOOC Lab project is, as I mentioned before, is discovering, web development and programming. Now, this is something that I had no prior knowledge of, and I've been able to do it thanks to the offering that's available online. I didn't study MOOCs to gain this information. I did, sort of short courses. There's lots of free offerings from coding camps and things like this, where you can learn to do this. And it's a question of, as I progressed through my website project, as and when I needed to know something, I would be on the internet and finding out like that. So it's a perfect example of how broad e-learning can be. You can learn things just from using Google, as well as doing a specific course on a specific thing. But I've discovered something which I never thought I would get interested in, which is the sort of web development, the technological side of a website, and I find it very exciting, surprisingly for me. And I would say that is probably the most exciting thing so far that's come out of this MOOC journey.
So, as I understood you, it's not just pursuing your own passion. It's also, if you want to get out of your comfort zone and try to do new things, MOOCs, and not just MOOCs, many of the free courses or the free information available on the internet can also be helpful. So, before we go, just a small question, which I'm always very curious to ask to people. If you need to design a MOOCs of your own and teach to people around the globe, what the topic could be and how you're going to pursue it, how you're going to convince people to join it?
That's a great question. I think possibly something along the lines that we've touched on before. I think if I were to design and publish a MOOC, it would be entitled something like Navigating and Succeeding in the World of Online Learning. So it would be a MOOC for people, and like we've said before, maybe for the older generation as well, but a MOOC which would lead people through the procedures that are involved in online learning, and base it on the content that's come out of MOOC Lab. Why not?
Yeah, I think you're right, because if I have to look on the statistics, the world population is going to age it in some countries very soon, and they're going to face a problem in Europe and Japan. So I believe the MOOC has a right time, so you can start working on it. It's not a bad idea, good idea to do that.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
But thanks for your time, Carolyn, and it's nice to have you here, and keep doing the good work in MOOC Labs, and I hope many more people like me and others who don't have information about MOOCs will get benefited from your journey, your entrepreneurship ventures, as well as your committed hard work towards spreading the word of education to many more people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ankit. Goodbye.